Chapter 1. Between Adam and Noah, a world losing its way. After Adam and his wife descended to earth, life began simply. The first generations remembered paradise vividly. They knew that there was a real enemy named Shaitan, that disobedience had real consequences, and that the way back to Allah's pleasure was through obedience and repentance. Fathers told their children, "Your grandfather Adam spoke directly with Allah. He saw angels. He walked in gardens not like these. Never forget, we were created to worship only Him." For a while, that advice lived strongly in their hearts. People prayed regularly, helped one another, and knew their purpose. But as centuries rolled on, the sharpness of that memory dulled. New children were born who never saw Adam, never saw the tears in his eyes when he spoke about Eden. They heard the stories, but in their minds, they became like legends. True, maybe, but not urgent. Daily life began to pull stronger than unseen truth. Fields had to be plowed, animals tended, trade routes explored. Still, Allah did not leave them alone. Among them arose righteous men and women, people whose hearts remained clear. They reminded others of Allah when they were about to cheat in trade. They stood up for the weak when the powerful tried to crush them. Among the most respected of these righteous people were 5 men: Wad, Suwa, Yaguth, Yaruk, and Nasr. These men were not prophets, but they were close to Allah. When people saw them, they remembered to pray. When disputes flared, they calmed hearts. When drought struck, they raised their hands to the sky and begged Allah for mercy, and often rain soon followed. Then they died. One by one, the community lost them. Grief settled over their people like a heavy cloud. Some could not bear the emptiness built into their daily routines, the empty spot in the gathering place, the missing voice at prayer, the absence of that one man who used to stand between them and their worst impulses. Shaitan saw his opportunity. He came to them not as an enemy, but as a whisper. "You miss them. Why not put something where they used to sit? Stones or carved shapes that look like them. Not to worship, no, only to remember. When you see them, you'll feel motivated to be better. You'll remember their piety." It sounded noble, so they built simple markers. When people passed by, they felt a sting of nostalgia and maybe made a dua. The next generation grew up with these figures already standing. They knew little about the people behind them. They only knew their parents spoke of them with deep reverence and spent time in front of them. Shaitan whispered again to the grandchildren, "Your forefathers used to come to these figures and were blessed with rain and success. These must be special. If you really want blessing, call on them, ask them for help." Slowly, remembrance became invocation. People began to say, "Oh Wad, give us children. Oh Suwa, protect our livestock. O Yaguth, grant us victory in battle." Carvings grew more elaborate. Shrines were built. Sacrifices were made at their feet. The people still knew of Allah, but now He felt distant, a great God of the sky, while these statues were close friends who could supposedly intercede for them. In reality, they had traded direct, pure worship of Allah for dependence on stone and wood. And behind it all lurked Shaitan, delighted. When people turned away from Allah, their moral compass began to twist. If a man could bow to rock he had carved himself, then cheating another human didn't feel so shocking. Bribery became normal. The powerful oppressed the weak. Entertainment and festivals centered around the idols pushed serious remembrance of Allah out of the calendar. This slow decline over 10 centuries is the world Nuh was born into, a world where almost no one remembered pure Tawheed, where false gods had names and followers, and where injustice was woven into daily life. Chapter 2. The Birth and Lineage of a Prophet. In the middle of this decaying spiritual landscape, a boy was born to a man named Lamech. They named him Nuh. His lineage reached back through righteous ancestors to the prophet Idris, Enoch, and beyond him to Adam himself. As a child, Nuh saw what everyone else saw, but he reacted differently. He watched people bring the first fruits of their harvest to stone figures, placing them carefully at their carved feet. He saw his neighbors whisper secrets and wishes into the ears of statues, then walk away, relieved, as if their burdens had truly been placed on the shoulders of rock. He watched how the idol priests gained power. They controlled when people could approach the statues, what offerings to bring, what omens meant. They used fear. If you do not offer enough, Yaguth will be angry. If you question us, Wad will send misfortune. Nuh's young mind questioned everything. He saw a statue toppled by a storm, and the same people who had worshipped it rushed to repair it. If it cannot protect itself from wind and rain, he thought, how can it protect anyone else? He spent a lot of time alone, walking in valleys, sitting on rocks, looking at the sky. The stars seemed ordered, not random. The seasons followed a pattern. People aged and died. New children took their place. A quiet conviction grew in his heart. There must be one creator behind all of this, one God far greater than stone and wood. As he grew older, Nuh became known as honest, thoughtful, and wise. People came to him to settle disputes because they trusted his fairness. He never used his position for personal gain. He did not flatter the rich or crush the poor. One night, only Allah knows exactly how, it happened. Revelation came. In that unseen moment, the burden of prophethood descended on his shoulders. He now knew with certainty what his heart had suspected. There is only one God, Allah, and Nuh was chosen to call his people back to him. He understood that his mission would not be easy. Generations had grown up with idols as part of their identity, their festivals, their sense of community. To challenge that was to challenge their entire way of life. But Nuh also understood something else. If he did not speak, no one would. So he prepared himself inwardly, strengthening his trust in Allah, steeling his patience, and then stepped forward to address his people as Allah's messenger. Chapter 3. The first call. My people, worship Allah alone. Imagine Nuh standing in a central place where people often gathered, a marketplace, an open clearing, perhaps near the largest idol shrine in the area. People who had known him since childhood noticed the seriousness in his eyes. He raised his voice so even those at the back could hear. "O my people," he called, "I am a clear warner to you." The words were simple but heavy. Worship none but Allah. Be mindful of Him and obey me. He will forgive you your sins and delay you to a fixed term. When Allah's term comes, it is never delayed, if only you knew. The crowd went quiet. No one had spoken so directly against the idols in living memory. Nuh pointed to the sky. Look at the alternation of night and day. Do your idols bring the night, or can they hold back the morning? Look at the sun, a burning lamp placed perfectly at a distance, where you feel its warmth but are not consumed. Look at the moon and stars, your guides in darkness. These are not gods, they are servants. The one who set them in their paths is the only one worthy of worship. He reminded them, Allah created you from dust, then from a drop, then formed you in stages. He gave you hearing, sight, and hearts. How can you then lower your heads to carvings your own hands made? Some listeners were stunned. The poor, who had often felt excluded from temple rituals, found his words strangely liberating. So we can call on Allah directly? We do not need to go through these idols? The leaders, however, quickly regained their composure. They stepped forward with practiced confidence. We see nothing in you except a man like us, they said, and the only people who follow you are our lowest, our poor, our servants, our simple folk. If your message were so noble, wouldn't the elite believe first? Nuh answered calmly, I am a man like you, yes, but Allah has revealed to me. If you want to judge truth by the clothes people wear and the houses they live in, you will always be wrong. Sometimes those you call lowest are highest in Allah's sight. He made it clear, I ask no payment from you. I do not want your wealth, your positions, your gifts. My reward is with Allah. That first day ended with no great miracle, no mass conversion, no dramatic sign. Just a man standing firm, planting the first seeds of Tawheed in a field hardened by centuries. It would be nearly 1,000 years before those seeds bore their final fruit. Chapter 4, Centuries of Dawah, Night and Day, Public and Private. Nuh's mission was not a short burst of enthusiasm, it was a lifetime of relentless effort. The Quran gives us his own summary. My Lord, I have called my people night and day, but my calling only increased them in flight. Every time I called them that you might forgive them, they put their fingers in their ears, wrapped themselves in their garments, persisted, and grew arrogant. Then I called them openly. Then I spoke to them in public and in private. Picture him in every setting possible. In the marketplace, standing on a raised stone, addressing crowds while merchants pause their trade. At night, going door to door, speaking softly to families by the dim light of a fire. At wells, talking to people while they drew water. On roads, walking side by side with travelers, using the changing scenery as examples of Allah's signs. He constantly adapted his approach. Sometimes he warned of a painful punishment. Sometimes he emphasized Allah's mercy. Ask your Lord for forgiveness. He is ever forgiving. He will send you rain in abundance, strengthen you with wealth and children, and grant you gardens and rivers. When he saw farmers worried about their crops, he said, It is not these idols who send rain. It is Allah. Turn to Him. When he met a child who asked, Who made the stars? He used that moment to teach. His persistence meant that every generation heard his message. A child who mocked him might grow old, and Nuh would still be there, warning him. Parents would tell their children, When you grow up, avoid this man. He will confuse you. But when those children became adults, Nuh would invite them too, giving them their own chance to hear. A tiny group believed. They were often the poor, the marginalized, those with little to lose in worldly status, but everything to gain in spiritual truth. There were likely craftsmen, shepherds, widows, orphans, people whose dignity had been trampled by the idol-based system. For centuries, Nuh watched these small pockets of faith survive amid a sea of disbelief. He buried some of his earliest followers, praying over them with tears, knowing they had stood firm against enormous pressure. He saw others waver and perhaps fall back under social pressure, and he felt their loss deeply. Through it all, he never stopped. No prophet's patience is highlighted in the Quran as often as Nuh's. 950 years of calling, hardly a handful of believers. From a worldly viewpoint, his mission looked like failure. From Allah's viewpoint, it was a staggering success in obedience. Chapter 5. The Elite Pushback, Mockery, Bargaining, and Threats. The chiefs of Nuh's people had much to lose if his message spread. Their wealth, influence, and control depended on the idol system. So they intensified their counter-campaign. Mockery became their favorite weapon. Whenever they saw Nuh speaking, they would roll their eyes and imitate his words in a silly voice. They encouraged children to sing mocking songs about him. "Here comes the old man with his invisible God," they sneered. Then came social pressure. They threatened anyone who showed interest in Nuh's message. "Follow him and you'll lose your job. Follow him and you'll no longer be welcome at the festivals. Follow him and we will cut ties with you." People who were considering belief pulled back, fearful for their livelihoods and families. Next, they tried bargaining. "Nuh," they said, "we might consider hearing you if you change your followers. Send away these poor ones. They lower our status. We can't sit at the same level as them." Nuh refused. "I will never drive away those who believe. They are going to meet their Lord, and you will answer for how you treated them. If I drove them away, who would protect me from Allah?" He also clarified, "I don't claim that with me are the treasures of Allah, or that I know the unseen, or that I am an angel. In other words, I'm not pretending to be anything more than a servant with a message. Don't expect me to show off some arrogance of my own so you can feel comfortable." When arguments and bargaining failed, they turned to open threats. "If you don't stop, we will stone you," they said. They hoped fear of physical harm would silence him. But Nuh had reached a point where fear of displeasing Allah outweighed fear of any human. He answered with honesty, "I cannot stop if I disobey Allah by staying silent. Neither you nor anyone else can protect me from him." Their last tactic was to twist the narrative. They told the masses, "This man has argued with us for too long. If he is truthful, let him bring the punishment he threatens. We don't believe it will ever come." Those words, asking for punishment, would later haunt them when the sky split and the earth burst with water. Chapter 6. Nuh's final dua and the command to build the ark. Finally, after centuries of rejection, Allah revealed to Nuh, "No one else from your people will believe except those who have already believed. So do not grieve over what they used to do." For the first time, Nuh knew with certainty that his mission of calling was complete. The door of repentance on a national scale had closed. He had exhausted every method. He had been patient beyond what any human would consider possible. Now his heart turned to justice. He saw how the disbelievers were raising children in the same idolatry and arrogance, training them to hate the truth before they could even understand it. He saw generation after generation being locked into a path that led only to destruction. He made a dua that marked a turning point. "My Lord, do not leave upon the earth a single home of the disbelievers. If you leave them, they will mislead your servants and beget nothing but wicked, ungrateful offspring." Allah answered that prayer, but the punishment would not come as a silent, invisible strike. It would come as a sign written across the entire world. Allah commanded, "Build an ark." He taught Nuh how to design it, plank by plank. The Quran says, construct the ship under our eyes and our revelation, and do not address me concerning those who did wrong. They are surely to be drowned." Nuh and the believers went to a place far from the sea and began building. The sight was strange, a large wooden structure rising on dry land. People from nearby regions came to see this curiosity. The chiefs laughed even louder. "Have you become a carpenter, Nuh? Ships are built by water, not in the middle of the land. Is your God going to carry it to the sea?" Nuh's answer was short but powerful. "If you mock us today, we will mock you later as you mock us. You will soon know who will be visited by a humiliating punishment and on whom it will descend permanently." Every nail driven into the wood, every plank fitted into place, every beam lifted was an act of worship, a sign of trust in a command that made no sense to those who lived only by what they could see. Allah gave Nuh a very specific sign. When water gushed forth from the oven in his house, an ordinary oven used for baking bread, that would be the moment to board the ark with the believers and pairs of animals. The believers watched the sky and the ground with a different awareness. The disbelievers saw nothing but a deranged old man and his pointless boat. But the earth and the sky were listening to Allah's command, and the appointed hour was getting close. Chapter 7. Boarding the Ark, a Father's Last Plea. One day, perhaps in an early morning, as a woman went to bake bread in Nuh's house, something impossible happened. Instead of heat rising from the oven, water burst from it like a spring. Nuh recognized the sign immediately. "Embark!" he cried. Doors were flung open. Believers gathered what they could and hurried toward the ark. Nuh called out names, checking that those who had believed over the years were entering. With them came animals, some walking calmly, others uneasy. Under Allah's control, they entered 2 by 2, pairs of cattle, goats, birds, wild creatures, even insects. To an outsider, it must have looked chaotic. Inside the ark, it felt like the unfolding of a precise plan. Many of the townspeople watched from a distance, half amused, half uneasy. Dark clouds began to gather. The air felt heavy. Nuh's eyes searched for his family. Some were there, believers who had endured years of ostracism. Others were missing. His wife, who had never truly shared his faith, stayed behind among the disbelievers. One son, young, strong, confident, stood apart on higher ground. He had hidden his disbelief for years, not wanting to fight openly with his father. But he had never truly accepted Nuh's message. Now, with water beginning to appear in strange places, his pride and fear wrestled inside him. As the ark lifted and began to move, Nuh saw him in the distance and shouted with all the urgency of a father and a prophet, "O my dear son, embark with us, and do not be with the disbelievers." His son shouted back, rain lashing his face, "I will take refuge on a mountain. It will protect me from the water." Nuh's reply carried both certainty and heartbreak. Today, there is no protector from the command of Allah except for the one upon whom He has mercy. Before another word could be exchanged, a giant wave surged between them. When it passed, the hillside was empty. The son Nuh had raised, for whom he had hoped guidance, was lost among the drowned. Inside the ark, the believers felt the ship rock violently as the waters rose. Lightning split the sky. The Quran says it sailed with them through waves like mountains. Every pitch and roll of the ark reminded them that what Nuh had warned of for centuries had now arrived. Outside, the same people who had once demanded, "Bring us the punishment if you are truthful," now screamed, ran, clung to rocks and trees, then disappeared beneath the churning flood. Every idol, Wad, Suwa, Yaguth, Ya'uk, Nasr, was swallowed by the same water their worshippers had believed they could control. The world had laughed at Nuh. Now the world was underwater. Chapter 8. A world underwater and the ark on the waves. The flood was not a local storm, it was a complete transformation of the earth's surface. The Quran describes it in a few swift words. The sky poured forth water, and the earth burst with springs, and the waters met for a matter already decreed. From above, clouds opened like broken dams. From below, springs gushed from every crack in the ground. Rivers swelled, lakes rose, seas surged inland. Hills became islands, then vanished. The outlines of the land disappeared under a single, roaring expanse of water. Inside the ark, light filtered through small openings. The believers felt every tilt and drop. They cried out to Allah when the waves crashed, then steadied their hearts with dhikr. Children clung to their parents, eyes wide. Some animals panicked, others lay strangely calm. Nuh moved among his people, reminding them, Allah promised to save us. This ship is not held up by wood and tar. It is held up by His mercy. Days merged into nights. They lost count. There was no land in any direction, only endless gray water and a low, constant roar. The memory of their old homes faded under the reality that everything had been wiped clean. At some point, only Allah knows, the divine command changed. O earth, swallow your water, and O sky, hold back. The rain slowed, then stopped. Springs ceased to gush. The water level began to drop. Peaks and ridges slowly emerged. The ark, which had known only motion for what felt like ages, finally bumped and settled. It had come to rest on Mount Jude. Silence replaced the roar. When the believers emerged, they saw a world transformed. No cities, no idols, no arrogant gatherings, only raw earth washed clean and a bright sky stretching wide overhead. Allah's words came as a gentle victory announcement. O Nuh, disembark in peace from us and with blessings upon you and upon nations to arise from those with you. Those who stepped off the ark that day were not just survivors. They were the founders of the next chapter of humanity. Chapter 9. Life After the Flood and Nuh's Final Advice. The survivors kindled the first fire they had seen since boarding the ark. Flames flickered, casting warm light on faces weathered by fear, hope, and long patience. They cooked hot food, perhaps for the first time in many weeks, and ate together in gratitude. No one was rushing anywhere. There were no markets to open, no idol festivals to attend, only time to breathe and thank Allah for survival. Around them, animals began to disperse. Birds took flight, filling the sky again with movement and song. Herd animals grazed cautiously on the emerging grasses. Small creatures scurried into new burrows. It was as if creation itself had been reset. Nuh now became not just a warner, but a founding teacher. He taught his people how to live in a way that would avoid the fate of the drowned nation. He reminded them constantly of three main truths. Tawheed, only Allah deserves worship. Never let stones, statues, or human beings take His place in your heart. Justice, the oppression that once filled the earth is what brought the flood. Treat others with fairness and mercy. Accountability, just as the flood was real, the day of judgment is real. Just because punishment is delayed does not mean it will never come. He raised children and grandchildren who had never seen idols with their own eyes. For them, Wad, Suwa, Yaguth, Ya'uk, and Nasr were just names in cautionary tales. Still, Nuh understood how quickly humans can forget. He repeated the lessons over and over. His lifespan stretched far beyond the imagination of most people. He had lived before idolatry was widespread, during its peak, through a world-ending flood, and in the quiet years afterward. Very few human beings in history have seen so many phases of humanity. As his own time neared its end, he gathered his children and their children around him. This was not just a family farewell, it was a prophetic will. He said, as the Prophet Muhammad narrated, "I am giving you far-reaching advice. I command you with two things and warn you against two things. I command you to hold fast to, that there is no God but Allah. If the 7 heavens and 7 earths were placed on one side of a scale and La ilaha illa Allah on the other, the phrase would outweigh them. And I forbid you from associating any partner with Allah and from arrogance." Those two forbidden things, shirk and pride, were what had destroyed his people. Those two commanded truths, tawhid and humility, were what had saved him and those with him. After completing his advice, Nuh's mission on earth was finished. His soul returned to the Lord he had served faithfully for centuries. His body was laid to rest in a place known only to Allah, though various traditions speculate about his grave. But his story did not end. The Quran would later tell it again and again, and the Prophet Muhammad would recount it to his companions, so that every generation of Muslims could learn from the man who preached for 950 years, built an ark on dry land, and saw a world drown for its arrogance. For more stories that can help you relax, don't forget to like and subscribe.